The December 2021 meeting of the Danvers School Committee. We'll begin with our Pledge of Allegiance. Where is it? Oh, there we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, the sheet that Diane gave me with the preliminary seems to have disappeared somewhere. Huh? Did you grab it by any chance?
I don't know, there's all kinds of stuff here.
Huh?
About that. About that.
Ah, that's it.
Did take it.
All right.
It was me.
That's okay. The Danvers Public Schools is a dynamic community of independent learners dedicated to respect, responsibility, creativity, and the pursuit of academic and personal excellence. This meeting is being broadcast by DCAT, Danvers Community Access Television. Is anyone else in the audience recording the proceedings? I see citizen journalist Mark Zubrick back there waving. Anyone else? No. Okay. So with that, we will begin our meeting. And we will start with items of interest to the superintendent, school committee, and community.
Thank you. I would like to make a brief statement. As a result of last month's school committee meeting, I have a brief statement I would like to make. I'd like to read it as this is emotional. As the leader of the Danvers Public Schools, I take all claims against students and personnel very seriously. At the same time, I'm a process person and want to work through the process to make sure everyone is treated fairly and students are protected at all times. We went through a detailed process back in June of 2020 when we became aware of the unacceptable language and alleged behavior that had taken place within the hockey team the previous winter season. We took action at the time. When concerns continued through social media in the summer of 2020, we were in full support of the school committee's decision to hire an independent investigator in September of 2020. We were also in agreement with their directive that we simultaneously work proactively to develop programs to improve the culture of the Danvers Public Schools. Throughout this time, I had many difficult conversations with parents, students, and staff, and spent many hours thinking about what I and the district was doing, and if we could do things differently, given the limitations we face due to privacy laws. The situation was discussed at school committee meetings for months, while at the same time we were working through the incredible challenge of trying to educate children through a global pandemic. When the recent media created a firestorm of opinions that we legally aren't allowed to comment on, it became an increasingly difficult situation, one that has taken a toll on students, staff, and me, as well as the community as a whole. I understand that there is a natural curiosity for people to know every detail of situations, but in this case, it simply isn't legally possible. As the superintendent, I understand attacks are going to come my way, and right or wrong, I have tried to shield my team from them while also making changes. For the protection of my own mental health, I quickly had to learn not to look at the social media comments, while at the same time take a critical look at how the situation was handled. As a result, I have actively worked to be more transparent in communicating all the work that is being done to make positive changes. As it's often said, talk doesn't matter unless it is backed up with action. You will see in our presentation tonight some of these action steps, which have and will continue to always put students first. I would like to publicly thank the many individuals and organizations that have reached out to me by phone, text, or email to express their support and offer ways to help. The issues of racism and homophobia and anti-Semitism are not issues I or the school district can solve on our own. These are problems facing our entire nation, and while we might not be able to change the country, I believe that Danvers is a community that can come together and work together to make a difference. These are community issues that require community solutions. I welcome your ideas on how the schools can be part of the solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Do we have items of interest from anyone on the school committee?
Can I just say something? Lisa, I appreciate you making a comment and a statement. I know the community, I think, was looking for that, and I appreciate that you took the time to do that and share that, and I just encourage you to keep doing that. I think, if anything, that's what we have learned over the last few months of this, but even just the last couple of years. Just keep that communication open. And again, I appreciate the statement that you made. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No? Okay. So at this point, we'll go to items of interest from the community. And this is your chance to speak publicly. Anybody who has signed up. Let's see. Were you first, sir? I think you were. So if you wouldn't mind going to the podium, identify yourself, and thank you.
Mr. Crane, can you just remind everyone the mask rule in the audience?
Who's that? Oh, Mr. Zuberg.
Yes, sir.
Would you put your mask on, please, sir? Thank you, Robin. I didn't notice
There's
that.
another individual.
Oh, anyone else? Who else is unmasked? Mr. Smith. Thank you. Robin, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good?
Sir.
All right. Hello, my name is Todd Butterworth. I'm a parent of 2 kiddos at Great Oak. I'm also a teacher in the district, but I'm here as a parent. My primary reasons for being here are to encourage anti-racist work throughout the district and to ask for communication and honesty with everyone. I was excited when, at the beginning of the year, we received a communication from Great Oak that the kiddos would be working with the book Stamped for Kids. This suggested that meaningful conversations would be occurring within the classroom, which would be wonderful. I've reached out several times to the school committee and administration about anti-racist work, and my emails have either been ignored or I have not been able to engage anyone in a meaningful conversation. Since my emails have not seemed to make an impact, I will reiterate them here and provide further comments. My first email was on November 12th. It read as follows. I wanted to reach out because I'm very confused. So this was after the school committee meeting, just to provide context. We got information that our kiddos were going to be learning about the book Stamped this year. I was thrilled. My kids have black and brown friends, and we as a family try to talk about how the experience those friends will have will be different from theirs because of their skin color. Having those discussions occur at school is needed. The Danvers community, including the school committee and administration, need to do work to learn about racism and anti-racism. Putting a pause or banning the book, which is super scary to even think about, is troubling on multiple fronts. For example, in June, the school committee discussed supporting an anti-racist statement that had already been approved by numerous other school committees for a year, and you botched that discussion. You revisited the statement in August and adopted it, but the discussion you had still showed a huge lack of understanding on the subject. Part of that statement says that everyone needs to do anti-racist work. That includes my children. That includes the school committee. I reached out to Eric to ask what work the school committee has done, never heard back. I did acknowledge perhaps my emails got lost, I don't know, but I did send at least 2 of them. Stamped is a way for the students to access this material and have those discussions. Please allow my children to have those difficult conversations with their teachers and peers. So that was sent to the school committee and the assistant superintendents and the superintendent. Later that day, I got an email from Mary Wormers. Hi, Todd. Thanks for sharing your thoughts about the reading of Stamped for Kids. If you refer to the DEI presentation at the November school committee meeting, our work with reading culturally responsive texts has not stopped. There are a variety of picture books that are being read in grades pre-K to 5. I'd like to schedule a time to meet with you in person to discuss our work with Stamped for Kids. Let me know when you have time. My wife and I set up a time with Mary and met with her on November 18th. During that conversation, we tried to find out how the decision-making process worked to put a pause on doing the anti-racist work with our kiddos, but Mary could not or would not tell us that. Our conversation was fine, but it did not provide us with much information. We were told that either Lisa Dana or Eric Crane would be reaching out to us to follow up on our conversation and provide further context. On December 6th, so that's 2 weeks or so later, my wife and I decided to once again reach out because we had heard nothing as a follow-up from our discussion with Mary. Here's what we wrote. Karen, my wife, and I met with Mary a few weeks ago to discuss the decisions around the book Stamped and its use at the elementary level. Since Mary couldn't tell us some of the logistics of the decisions, she said she would talk to you two and you would reach out to us. As parents, we're concerned about the decision-making process and would appreciate having a conversation about this book and other anti-racist decisions. I'd also like to ask again what the school committee and upper administration is doing to begin or continue their own learning around anti-racism as committed through the adoption of the anti-racist resolution this summer. We look forward to our children learning and doing this important work. Thank you. So the next day I got this response from Lisa Dana. School committee will be discussing at 12:13 meeting as part of equity subcommittee updates. That's it. That was the entire email. While I'm glad we got a response, we asked to have a conversation about the decision-making process. We also asked what the school committee was doing. Neither of those requests was addressed, nor have they been addressed. The lack of transparency and honesty is something that the Boston Globe pointed out as a problem within our district. We as a district and as a community need to do a lot of work. I try to have open and honest communication in my life because I think that's a priority. I also try to make sure to take anti-racist steps to support those in my life that have been marginalized for so long. I don't think our request to have a conversation about the decision-making process and to be provided with information about what work the school committee and upper administration are doing to do anti-racist work are that much to ask. It saddens me that the adult leadership continues to prevent positive steps from occurring. I know we can do better, and I know we have adults and children within the district who want to do better. We need our leadership to step up and be a part of the solution, not a continued part of the problem.
All right, well, thank you for your comment. And first of all, I apologize for not responding in terms of curriculum, but I had a pretty good sense that the administration would be reaching out to you. In terms of what you'll hear tonight, I think will explain exactly what we're doing about anti-racism going forward. The other thing is I wouldn't say that the work has stopped at any point. I don't think at our last meeting we decided to the best word would be delay reading of the book Stamped, but there are a whole bunch of other things that we're doing and other books that are being used. So if your question is about Stamped generally, we'll have a conversation about that at least in some sense tonight. But I would not say that it's accurate to say that we're doing nothing about anti-racism. I think everyone here considers it important. At the same time, there are different viewpoints in the community about which books we should be using. You'll find some people probably in this room who think that any of it is too far. And then there are people who are concerned that we're never going to be doing enough. So I understand what we want to do is to try and bring the community along with us. And Lisa will be talking about a plan to do that tonight. So I would urge you to stay for the meeting, listen to what we're talking about tonight, and I think you'll understand. I hope you'll come away with an understanding more of what the future is going to look like. But we are, in fact, committed to anti-racist policy. And I know that in preparation for this meeting, I read Stamped, the one that is proposed for the children. I think Arthur, you might have read it as well. I don't know if, yeah. So we've all read the book to educate ourselves about what it says. And so
When did you read that book?
Huh?
When did you read that book?
I read that book, after the November meeting, but right after the November.
There's the problem.
Huh?
There's the problem. You're making decisions about things that you're not educated about. So
We don't, Todd, school committee doesn't make decisions about curriculum.
Well, so
So-
I reached out to ask how these decisions were made, and no one responded about that. And Mary wouldn't talk about or couldn't talk about that. You're continuing the same thing where you're not actually saying how decisions are being made, how we're putting a pause on a book that we were told that they were going to work on. One of my daughters, when I said I was coming here and why I was coming here, said, "Oh yeah, that was on my teacher's bookshelf," but apparently now it's gone. So I'm asking, why are these things happening? And it's not enough to say that we care about anti-racist work. Lisa said in her opening statement that actions are going to speak louder. The actions you're taking are not anti-racist. The actions you're taking are things that sound good, but are not actual steps to make a change.
But you haven't heard about what we're going to be talking about tonight, have you?
True.
Okay. So what I'm going to suggest is listen to what is talked about tonight. I'm going to devote a lot of time to the very subject. And the other thing I would say is, look, Stamped is one particular book. And I don't even know if people on the school committee have a firm feeling about whether it's appropriate or not. Not that, again, it's not necessarily our role to decide this. But I think Lisa, to her credit, is trying to get a consensus in terms of what the anti-racism curriculum would look like. And I would tell you there's some differences, I am sure, in terms of whether this particular book is the best book for that particular age group. I don't have too many problems with it. Others might. So I would encourage you, I'd ask you to listen to the conversation here We all know it's important, but it's also something that we want to do at the right time. We want to present issues to the right grades so that they can understand what's being taught and have the capacity to critically look at what they're being presented. You know, there are concepts in the book Stamped, the edition we read, written for, I believe, younger learners. There are concepts that are pretty, I would say, deep, you know, pretty sophisticated. And we want to make sure that we're presenting that. At least that's how I found it, as a reading it and trying to put myself in the position of an adolescent, or, you know, even someone younger than that, you know, say first grade to third grade or fourth grade. That the concepts there often require some, I think, deeper explanation. And
Isn't that what the teachers are there for?
well, I understand that, but we want to make sure that the teachers who've all had a chance to read the book and discuss it with the curriculum department and have a sense of exactly how we're going to teach it.
So why did we get a communication at the beginning of the year that this was the plan? What changed?
Lisa, I'll let you talk about that if you want.
I would like to do it as part of the presentation afterwards, where this is public comment versus,
I'm okay with you answering it now, Lisa. Todd's here. He's asked the questions. Let's, you know, you don't have to spend as long as you would on the presentation, but yeah, I'd like to see you address it for him.
So it was looking at, we have our school improvement plans, and in the school improvement plans, the work with 3 through 5 teachers, there was a study group, and that was presented, and looking and then working with our equity subcommittee, with our school committee, review that plan also, and in working with teachers and the elementary team. Yes, it was my decision at that point to put a pause at the moment for the month of November. Is that the piece where we wanted to really make sure that we were looking at the curriculum, how any particular book fits into our entire elementary curriculum. And we also have new civics units at the elementary school. So where this could be looked at between grades 3 through 8 as part of our reading workshop and the work with Teachers College that we have. It was the first time going through that. So many times when you do something for the first time, there's a flow to the plan. It doesn't go exactly in the time frame that we're looking at. So that's where we are, and we will be presenting tonight an opportunity for our school committee to spend in a workshop model with elementary parents and to be able to take a look at our elementary curriculum. So we really all understand where we're moving forward with our curriculum for culturally responsive teaching.
I mean, the book, you know, in all due respect, the book is controversial in some circles. Not everybody thinks it's appropriate for young folks. And maybe when it was first added to the list, we weren't as sensitive to that part of it. And I don't know if anybody else on the committee has any comment on this particular issue.
No, I think if we know a district who has recently taught it and who is currently teaching it, I think that would be a good strategy to like talk to them. Because maybe they could give us some input into how they dealt with those controversial issues. I know that the teachers spent a ton of time prepping for it, and the curriculum directors. So, you know, they were excited about teaching it, I think, from the most part. So I think, yeah, maybe like learning what other districts have done who have or are teaching it currently.
Yeah. And I would say, Todd, we want to do it the right way. And it's better to get it right than it is to push it through if it's not going to be right.
See, I'd push back on that. I'd say it's better to work to have those conversations, however awkward they may be, and potentially struggle with those conversations. Because I've worked on those conversations with peers that I've had. I've worked on those conversations in a lot of different contexts, and they're uncomfortable and they're hard to have. But my children can have those conversations. I can explain to them that their friends will be treated differently, that their friends' families have been treated differently because of the color of their skin. So I think it's more important to have those conversations than to try to find the perfect time for this. Like, we're too late to find the perfect time. We're a year and a half too late. We should have been already into this.
Well, here's
So
the thing.
waiting for whatever this perfect time might be, or to deliver it in the most perfect manner, that's not realistic. This is a messy, messy thing. And we need to start having those conversations with our kiddos. If you don't think our kids can have those conversations, you need to talk to kids. Kids can have those conversations at any age.
That's what we'll be talking about all night.
So, I mean, yeah, there's going to be a lot of discussion about this. All I would say is, stamped is one book. It's not the whole curriculum. So, anyway, I
didn't
hope
say
you'll
anything
stay.
about that. My encouragement was to encourage anti-racist education
Yep.
and to encourage communication. I reached out to multiple parties, and basically it was ignored. And that's a decision you guys made, and so that's why I'm here. I didn't want to come here and do this, but that's why I'm here. And it's a continuation of a pattern of ignoring what other people are saying and ignoring uncomfortable conversations.
Well, I would disagree that we're ignoring what people are saying, because you're not the only one who weighs in on this. But again, please stay and watch the meeting, see the content, see the plan, and let's go from there.
Okay.
Thank you, Todd. Next up, Mark Smith.
Again.
I know.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I promised my wife I would try and keep it brief, and I love my wife. And I love all of you, so I'm going to do the best I can. But this is a topic of grave concern, and there are a lot of rhetoric used that is very nice. But I'm going to start off by reading something from General Telford Taylor. He wrote, "The wrongs which we seek to condemn and punish have been so calculated, so malignant, and so devastating that civilization cannot tolerate their being ignored because it cannot survive their being repeated." And he was the general in charge of the Nuremberg tribunals after World War II. A lot of people don't understand that there were 3 separate tribunals. There was one for the Nazi high command, the military. There was one for the chemical company, IG Farben, and their industrialist backers, as there was a chemical company cartel back then too. And there was a 3rd tribunal for the Nazi doctors, the whitecoats who participated in eugenics and testing and selection and extermination. And one of the things that came out of the Nuremberg tribunal was the Nuremberg Code. Because in 1933, the German law, the Nuremberg Law, passed, which legalized an apartheid state. It legalized discrimination against the Jews and other people that they felt were of lesser standing. That was in 1933, called the Nuremberg Laws. So the Nuremberg Code, 1947. Number 1, it says the voluntary consent of the human subject is absolutely essential. So to get voluntary consent, you have to have a legal standing of informed consent. And anybody who practices law and deals with medicine can understand that there is a legal standard of informed consent when you're practicing medicine, right? So to have someone who understands what medical treatment they're getting, to get consent from the patient so that they understand the side effects and the benefits to whatever procedure or medication therapy that they're taking. So last time I spoke about some of the CDC and FDA known adverse events that they had known October of 2020, right? Well before the vaccine was rolled out. So they knew about that, but they didn't share it with the general population. This is what they shared. This is the available fact sheet from the FDA. You can go online and get it. Just type in FDA COVID-19 vaccine fact sheet. It'll pop right up. This one was updated December 9th, 2021, and it shows what are the risks of the vaccine. Well, it talks about difficulty breathing, swelling, fast heartbeat, bad rash. They added myocarditis, and then it goes on to a few other things. Allergic reactions, headache, muscle pain, joint pain, fever, diarrhea, vomiting. And at the bottom, it says, these may not be all possible side effects of the vaccine. Serious and unexpected side effects may occur. The possible side effects of the vaccine are still being studied in clinical trials. And that's not true because they ended the clinical trials early. They unblinded all the participants, and they gave both sides, the placebo group and the control group, the COVID-19 vaccine. So they're not being studied anymore. It's a fait accompli. So recently, under a FOIA request from an attorney, the FDA had to release a document from Pfizer. This is from February 28, 2021. Pfizer communicated to the FDA, the Center for Biological Evaluation Research. This is all being recorded. That's why I'm talking fast. So this is the document, right? It's supposed to be confidential. And
Okay, you're at 3 minutes. I'm going to ask you to wrap up your
Perfect.
thoughts, please.
Thank you. What I will call your attention to, if anybody gets a hold of this document, is the appendage. And Appendix 1. Okay, Appendix 1. List of adverse events of special interest. These are significant adverse events. That's a lot. That's a lot. Okay, page. There's more. Page. Hold on. Page. This is diabolical. Look at all these. And you know what these are? A reduction in your antibodies, an autoimmune disease, vascular, neurological, nervous systems, all kinds of problems. So they put this available to the public as being something that
You're at.
not that big of a deal. All right, so I'm going to wrap up. Thank you. But I'm going
Thank you.
to serve these to Dr. Lisa Danvers, the superintendent of schools, a copy of each, the fact sheet and the FISA document. This is a notice of liability. So you have it, it's all recorded, and potentially bad outcomes that happen, you've been served with those documents, because it's easy to say, well, we didn't know,
Okay, you're all set, sir. Thank
but
you.
now you know.
No, you're all done. Thanks.
Thank you, I am all done.
All right, we're going to move on to information. Oh, I'm sorry. Does anybody else have something to say? Oh, you're going to be journalist and citizen tonight, huh?
I am a citizen of this town, am I not?
Absolutely.
Jim, can you operate the camera?
No, the camera is set. Don't worry about it. I'll get it to you guys in a minute. I came for a different reason because I have seen these meetings have gone on cable, but you can't hear you. You can't see most of you. That's why I brought the camera today, because I want close-ups similar to what I did in August. And I think people don't understand. And one of the comments that was made today by Mr. Smith and the previous speaker, I don't know, there he is, communications. Communications for this school committee and this administration, and excuse the expression, they suck. The one thing that I noticed today, and I'm bringing a different viewpoint to this meeting because I looked at your agenda for this meeting. It doesn't tell you anything. It doesn't give you any information. How can the public come and speak to the school committee and or the administration without being, identified as being ignorant, because we don't know what's on the agenda? So the agenda needs to be improved. The second item that I have is you will be speaking today, I guess, against the strategic plan for diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's been a drum that's been beat many, many times over these meetings, but there's nothing concrete about it. I don't know what it is. And look at the public attendance at your meeting. None, except for a few. Excuse me. The second item, well, the third item on my list here is that I have been filing these emails to both the school committee and I think the administration in regards to the same issues that were discussed tonight. The mask issue is a problem. The vaccine issue is a problem. And the school committee seems to be wrapped up in their own little world because they want to control the students. And that's my own perception, I understand. And the Nuremberg trials are a very good example. Oh, I'm just following orders. Well, when is the independence of the Danvers School Committee become evident?
So you're suggesting that, I assume, just listening to you, you're suggesting that if the state says mandates masks, we should stand up and say no.
Yes, absolutely.
What other laws should we not follow?
Well, there's a few. There's a few. But that's not my
Make a
third.
list and we'll review them and see
Pick
which
and
ones
choose,
we
maybe,
can't follow.
Yeah.
My third point.
This is fourth.
No, it's the third. And you stop ringing your bell.
Very childish.
It is. It is very childish. I mean, the people in this town deserve to be heard.
This is,
Whether it's from the school committee, the board of selectmen, or the finance committee. And the one thing that I want to bring up is there's been a lot of discussion in regard to the Essex Tech. Essex Tech has been a stumbling block for the Danvers school system because we don't know how to keep the magnet on our students to keep them in our school system. Essex Tech seems to be offering a lot more opportunity for our students, and that's what they need. So that's my third point, and I'm going to leave it at that. And I want to, first of all, thank you, Mr. Crane, for appearing on the show. And that was a very good discussion, and we need to continue that further.
yeah, I enjoyed that, Mark. I think it was a good discussion.
Thank you.
Oh, now someone is going to speak.
I actually can't hear you here, but in my notes you use very soft.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Exactly. I actually can't hear you here.
So-
You're very soft spoken. If you can speak up just
Oh, more to the microphone?
that would be awesome. Thank you.
So
No one's ever accused me of that before, but okay.
So, to the, say, Mark, when you watch it on TV, do the microphones not, you can't hear it? You can't hear what's being said?
On my microphone?
No, so when you watch it, or you said when you watch it on TV, can you not hear what we're saying with our microphones here?
Yes.
Ah, okay.
So,
That's been brought up to DCAT, and I think we need to advance that because our community needs to know what's going on. And you can fall asleep watching your meeting, and no excuse, but that's the way it is.
so we need to,
Talk to
Check
DCAT about
into
that. Yeah,
Absolutely.
no reason why that's why these things are here.
yeah. Ben is
They're not
listening,
here for
so-
here, they're here supposedly for
Yeah,
telecommunication.
Well, like the comment was made just now, even in this room, I don't know, maybe I'm getting old and my hearing is going, but I have selective hearing as well. But the problem is that people in this room can't hear you.
okay, that's a good point, Mark. We'll have to talk to DCAT about that. Thank you. All right. So let's go,
Chance to speak as well, please?
sure.
Okay, thank you. My name is Sandy Francischini. I wanted to come here tonight to introduce myself because I have a very long email that I want to send to you all, but I at least want to introduce myself and let you know why I'm here. I want to start a little organization called Voice Our Choice. I feel that come January 15th, that the mask mandate should be by choice and not by force. I feel that we've tried that already, and it doesn't seem like it's working, and we need to try something new. If we keep doing the same thing and then expect different results, it's just not going to happen. So I feel that it should be a parent's choice. That, allow the kids to come to school. If I just feel like they'd be more comfortable. When I went to Essex Tech to pick up my daughter, a lot of the kids had their masks below their nose, below their chin, and some of them didn't even have it on. And my daughter said, yeah, we're all getting frustrated with the masks. So the kids need to be heard as well as the parents. So it gets very stressful when you're trying to get out of the house and you're running a little late and you're like, Mom, my mask. It's getting to be a little tired. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be disrespectful to anybody because I know everybody has their own choice and some want to use the mask and that's fine. But I feel like parents should have a voice as well. And the same goes with the vaccines. I am totally against the vaccines, but that's my choice. Others aren't the same, and that's fine, and I honor that, and I respect that. And I should also get that respect as well. So I'm a little nervous here right now. This is my first time speaking. I apologize. And I know I only have 3 minutes. I don't want to hear the timer.
No, that's fine.
But thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I'm sorry if I spoke a little fast. And I will send that email out to you all tonight. If you have any questions, please let me know, okay? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good job.
All right. Anyone else? No. All right. Information from the student representative.
Because we'd
Hi,
like to,
everyone.
Oh, I'm sorry. We need an
sorry.
introduction.
We just want to take one moment to introduce you. So in our work with Adam Federico, our new high school principal, in working with our student leaders, we are looking at having 2 students, and hopefully at times they'll both be here, and at other times maybe 1 student will be here, and also working with our Human Rights and Inclusion Committee. So I would like to welcome Reese McDonald to our school committee meeting. Welcome, Reese.
Hi.
Welcome, Reese.
So, as I said, I'm Reese. I'm a junior here at DHS, and I'm very excited to be here and be able to voice my opinion and help change the school, make it better. A couple of the things I'm a part of. I'm a part of the chorus executive committee here, and I'm also a part of one of the a cappella groups, Skywave. I also am a part of the band, and I do color guard, and I'm treasurer of the class of 2023. And some things that I like to mention from the student side, the Tri-M Music Honor Society induction ceremony is this Wednesday at 7 p.m. in the auditorium. The Anti-Discrimination Club is continuing to look for new members and was given a $500 grant to put towards future events. PRISM, which is a LGBTQ club, meets on Tuesdays after school in Mr. Ford or Miss Carnevale's room, and rehearsals for Drama Fest are starting tomorrow after school. So very excited to see all that stuff rolled out.
Thank you, Reese. What do you know what the membership numbers are in the Anti-Discrimination Club right now are, or you were?
In the Google Classroom, I think there's 42 people who are in the Google Classroom.
Okay. I hear you. All right. Well, that's good. I hope that you continue to grow those numbers. It's a good club, and you've done good work in the past. So, any other comments for Reese beyond a welcome?
Only that she seems very busy.
Very true. Well, thank you, Reese. We look forward to hearing from you more. All right. COVID statistics and next steps.
Just give it 1 second for the projector. Turn on. So as it turns on, we can just, a reminder as we start each of our meetings about our current mitigation strategies in place, which include our hand washing, staying home when sick, and wearing a face covering, again, per the DESE regulation in place at the moment. So then this month we will jump right into it. As we go through the 5 weeks of data, you will see that we've seen an increase in the schools, as has much of the state. I would like to start off with just a thank you to the community for really keeping kids home when they are sick. So we'll talk about, we talk about the cases that were in the school building within 48 hours of being symptomatic, but I'll also share a little bit of data of additional cases where kids were not in school because they were kept home when sick. So that is a big piece, and we're thankful to the community for that. So for the week of November 12th, there were 9 cases in the schools, with 93 cases townwide. 13% of the cases were in kids. And that week, there was actually an additional 4 cases of kids that are enrolled in school but were not in the school setting while being infectious. If we jump to the next week, you'll see that there was 7 cases in school with 111 cases townwide. There was a total of 18 students enrolled during that week. So again, there was 11 additional cases where kids did not come to school because they weren't feeling well. So again, that is helping us slow the spread. There was 23% of those cases were in kids under the age of 18. And you'll see that there were 0 cases from in-school transmission. If we jump to the 26th, there was 20 cases in the school setting. There was a total of 31 cases that week. So again, 11 cases where, because kids were staying home because they were sick, that did not affect the schools. 27% of the cases were under the age of 18. And that week we actually did have 5 cases of in-school spread. So that was contact traced back to a little cluster in one of the schools. So again, anytime we have one of those clusters, that's an opportunity for us to review our mitigation strategies, look where we can make tweaks to try to prevent that from happening again in the future. So I would say throughout the whole year, we've really only had 3 of those cases. Unfortunately, that has been 2 of those have been in the last 5 weeks. We'll get to the second one in this past week, but it also will lead us into a reminder that we sent out to faculty this morning about making sure we're using our mitigation strategies. So if we jump to the next period, there was 15 cases in school. The positivity rate is up to 6.13%, and 31% of the cases were under the age of 18, with 1 case from school-based spread. I'll also note that between, because I know we did get this question from a few community members, between November 19th and the 26th, not to jump backwards, but you'll see that the overall townwide vaccination rate actually went down from 76% to 72%. That was based on children 5 to 11 becoming eligible for the vaccine. That changed the size of our plot that percentage was calculated off of. So that is why you see the decrease in that given week. So now jumping to 12/10, which is our most recent week, we had 29 cases in the schools. There was a total of 36 cases, so 7 cases of kids that tested positive for COVID but remained at home. The positivity rate was up to 6.68%, 33% of the cases under the age of 18, and then 2 cases of school-based transmission. Again, those 2 cases were tied to actually the same pod in one of our elementary schools. So one of our strategies, especially in the K-5 level where kids stay together, is to have students in cohorts. So that way they stay in that cohort between multiple classes and multiple periods throughout the day. So if there is any school-based spread, the number of close contacts and that potential spread stays minimized while we're still able to maximize some of our educational goals by having students work together. I'm just going to pause quickly there if there's any questions about the statistics for those 5 weeks, and then I'm going to jump into a little bit of information about the vaccination rates and then into our mitigation strategies.
Keith, I have some questions, please.
This is not a public hearing on this particular item. That's why we had items of
It has the
interest.
information, but it's not broken down into more specific information. It'd be nice to have it broken down per elementary school, per the high school and the middle school. And also be nice to know of any of those cases, how many of the kids were vaccinated that got vaccine and then who got the COVID, and how many who weren't vaccinated that got COVID.
All right, we'll
It'd be
take
nice to have that information as well.
that as a comment in terms of breaking it down. Keith may be able to talk a little bit about what we're doing in terms of identifying students who are vaccinated or not.
Yep, and I
Well,
can.
not that, and then also who were hospitalized, who have any died from this, or, just information.
Again, we'll take that piece under advisement. I think it's safe to say we don't know of any students who've died from it.
Right.
Luckily, thank God.
And I can speak to some of those pieces as we talk about our mitigation strategies and next steps.
No, that's
so I can
fine.
talk about some of that.
It's just,
One of the points that she brings up, Arthur, you echoed it was a few months ago when Jesse was showing that they weren't going to show breakthrough cases anymore. We agreed that it was necessary to see efficacy and to see what the spread was like with the vaccine being introduced. So we talked about this a few months ago. How come it's not being updated? Why can't we see numbers that actually mean something? These numbers don't mean anything. We have to be able to compare to a group of people who have taken the vaccine to see if the vaccine protects anybody.
So I can, Mr. Crane, I guess I can talk to that.
I'm
piece right
confused. Can we just pause for a second? I'm sorry. This is not public comment, right?
Right.
Okay, so we're not, okay. So can Mr. Taverna said before, does anyone have any questions before he moves on to vaccination rates? I have a quick question for you. When you are talking about the school spread and we get the emails like 2 kids from Thorpe, whatever, tested. That doesn't, as you have to clarify for people, that just means, that doesn't mean it was spread in school. It means someone got tested, whether it was through the school or through their own physician, called and said, my child's home today, they have COVID, right?
Correct.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I don't want parents to think that when it's like 2 kids from DHS, that means there were 2 transmissions.
Right.
Just means
No, we
a
don't.
child
We don't
was
indicate that information until we share
Okay.
the summary information on the slide at school committee.
Okay.
We do track a lot of detailed information behind the scenes that is kind of private because it does include some student medical history. It includes the contact tracing element. So every single case that we have in school, we do work with our nurses to contact trace and then the test and stay. And then we track what those kids do in test and stay to see if they're positive, which also often indicates to us whether it's school-based spread or not. And then we take it to the next level of, is this a group of kids that play together outside of school all of the time, right? Or what are those other factors that play into that?
So parents should not assume if it's 2 kids tested, that means there was a transmission. Someone is out sick with COVID and got it somewhere.
It is 90+% is from outside spread.
Okay.
It's just the number of kids that tested positive.
Thank
We
you.
are in the process of exploring whether there would be the ability technologically and really operationally to do kind of like an interactive data dashboard that may include a by school breakdown in real time, so that as we updated some of the data, as we input that into our spreadsheet, whether we have the ability for that to share automatically to the website, and a little bit of a more detailed by school view. We've seen other districts move to that. And that's honestly been part of their long-term strategy of there's a lot of people that read the COVID emails. There's a lot of people that have become somewhat desensitized to them because they come out, because COVID is kind of here to stay now, right? In the beginning, this was a strategy, and they've moved towards an interactive dashboard where parents can actively seek out that data in more real time versus the emails, and what that transition looks like. So we're exploring that with our technology department right now and looking at what that could potentially look like coming up in the new year, to share with you as a potential development.
Thank you.
Any of these tests, culture in the
Okay,
lab confirmed?
Stop. Let's go. Who's asking questions here? No, this is not public comment. Public comment is completed.
Yes.
No
Are
more.
any of these confirmed in a lab cultured test?
Yeah, you know, you just talk on when I tell you no more questions. I mean, no offense, but
I think it's a scientific question.
it doesn't matter. Public comment is over at this moment.
Test to confirm.
So if we
Keith, please continue.
If we now jump down into our vaccination rate data, as we have in past months, we'll share in going back to our 11-4 meeting, and we're just going to share this over the in-between meeting time. So we'll share the 11-4 data and then the last available data. So you'll see as of 11-4, there was about 75% of residents that were vaccinated. You see the age breakdown that is here, along with some of the state rates. And then if we jump to the next slide, you'll note that this information is actually from the week of 12/2 because the most recent data wasn't updated. But you'll see here, and there's not really been a material change in those vaccination percentages from the state piece. And we will be adding the 5 to 11-year-olds in the bottom right-hand corner for Danvers as we move forward specifically. And then really, I guess the most important slide that we do is the next one for vaccination rates. As we've talked about, it is a voluntary data collection that we have with families, and we encourage families to share their vaccination cards with us as we are doing our contact tracing and looking at whether we have breakthrough cases or not. Again, that is all voluntary information that parents share with us. So if the parents haven't shared that information, we wouldn't necessarily be aware of that to know that information one way or the other. And when we're not aware of what that information is, we default to that they're not vaccinated as our default answer. So you'll see that we have the high school is just about the same, up 2 percentage points over the last month. The middle school is actually up to 50% vaccinated, but there actually is a typo there, pardon, in the middle school cell. So let me double check that as we talk. Great Oak is at about 12%, Highlands is at 12%, Riverside is at 19%, Smith is at 18%, and then Thorpe is at 11%. So as we look at that 80% threshold that currently exists with DESE, we do remain fairly far off for each of those. So again, we would encourage families to voluntarily share their vaccination cards with the school nurse if they are vaccinated, so that we can have accurate data as the school committee looks to make some of those decisions in the future. I guess I'll pause there around vaccination rates.
Any questions here? No. Okay.
Okay, so then if we jump into our next slide is around our mitigation strategies. So we did send out a reminder to staff today. And again, we talk about reminders for families every month about staying home when sick, but these are really our core mitigation strategies. I think to date, even with the increase of cases, we've shown that these mitigation strategies work fairly well as our school-based spread numbers have been relatively low. So the use of our air purifiers in classrooms, making sure that we keep at least one window open when using the air purifier. Again, that's where the science shows that they work the most effective. Mask wearing, utilizing cohorts in classroom setups. So again, especially at the elementary level, the 4 kids that you are with in your grade 1 classroom are going to be the 4 kids that you're with in art and music and PE, and then at lunch, because again, it minimizes that cross spread. that is something that's a little bit harder to keep in place at the middle school and high school as they change classes and there's more students interacting with each other, but we continue to work with that. Disinfecting classrooms after a positive case, staying home when sick, and again, thank you to the community for being diligent with that so far. Participation in the Test and Stay program. Again, that's a state-run program where they put into place what tests that we use. It's an approved test by them that we run. That's all part of that state program with information available on the website. And then asking people to look for other community testing options that are available as appropriate for whatever choices they might be making in their personal life. Again, not telling people what to do or not to do, but just giving them the available resources that are there to help them make decisions and to help stop the spread the best we can. And so we'll continue to monitor the case counts in the schools and look for school-based spread to decide if there's additional mitigation strategies that we need to put in place, such as more stringent distancing or whether we need the return of plexiglass at lunch. Again, so far the data hasn't shown that those are points where we're having a lot of school-based spread. So, but we're going to continue to monitor that. Again, we have a 10-column spreadsheet that we keep on every single case that comes in. So that way we know all of that detailed information behind the scenes to make sure that we're able to make those educated decisions and then share the summary data that doesn't identify individual students when we come to each meeting each month. And those data sheets are posted to our website each Friday. So we continue to encourage families to check there and to reach out with any questions that they may have.
Questions or comments for Keith? No? All right. The only thing I would say, I noticed we had a Thorpe parent reach out and we've responded to her, I take it, in terms of our mitigation strategies. Okay.
And we did have, and I'll say that we had a tough week at Thorpe last week. There were quite a few cases at the school, and that's a pattern that we've actually seen with other schools. So I'd say to start the year, it was Smith kind of right out of the gate, and then in October it was Highlands, and last week it was Thorpe. And a lot of it is if you've got a first grade and a fourth grade sibling and one of them gets COVID, sometimes the other fourth grader gets it, and then they played with a different fourth grader and that fourth grader gets it, and then their second grade sibling gets it, and it kind of just creates this bubble in the school for the week. And then we hope that it passes by, right? And it's been quieter at Thorpe over, I would say, like the past, over the weekend and today, and I'm going to knock on wood, right? But we have seen that as like little waves throughout all of our school. The middle school went through one 2 or 3 weeks ago, and but a lot of times it's tied to kind of those circles outside of school and what we're seeing in the larger statewide picture.
Okay.
I just ask,
Sure.
The in-school transmission, you had mentioned it's 90%. It's actually pretty much higher than that, isn't it? I'm looking through the numbers. It looks like there's very few in-school transmissions at all.
There is very few. I mean, thankfully, it has spread primarily outside of school, which is, again, right, I think a testament to the mitigation strategies and to the families' dedication to keeping kids home when sick. And, again, I guess I didn't thank our faculty and staff yet, but a thank you to them for all of their hard work to make sure that they are doing cohorts and that they're reminding kids of mask above your nose and all of those different pieces and, to stay in your cohorts and to try to do the best that we can to minimize the spread.
And then back to the vaccine thing. So like literally we only can know if they self-report, correct? We have no other way of knowing that information.
A lot of times the information is shared in, and I'm going to not get the letters right, but through the statewide vaccine database. But to date, we've not had our nurses actively seeking out that information because it's, we do seek out the information for the chickenpox vaccine because it's a requirement for school. So if it's not been shared. Right. This is not a requirement to be in school, so we are not actively seeking that.
So could we even, if we wanted to? I mean, I would, because it's not based on a requirement. So wouldn't the privacy issue be important there?
Yes. Yes. I would say we physically could get to it if we wanted to. It is not something that
would we have to have like
to do it.
Would we have to have some specific reason to be able to try to get it?
Correct. Okay. And we don't have that reason based on our, because essentially for a family, if you tell us you're vaccinated, it changes your test and stay route because if you're vaccinated and you're symptom free, you don't need to participate in test and stay. If a family chooses not to share their vaccination card in that status, it defaults to them not being vaccinated. So for all intents and purposes, every student that comes to Danvers is not vaccinated and they follow one set of rules. When we find out that you are vaccinated, then we go to the side B of the rules and implement it that way. So we don't have a need to know.
And I think I know the answer to this because I think I asked him before, but I just don't remember if I remember it exactly right. But when we talk about that 80%, we can't go to the state to prove our 80%, correct?
Correct.
We can't do that. We have to do it from self-reporting.
Yes, because the state numbers would include all Danvers residents, which do not truly indicate what that local data is at the individual school level.
So it could be could be other schools too.
Right, we could find that, you know, Essex Tech is 100% vaccinated and we're only 60 and they average together for 80. And that's not true math because the enrollments don't work that way, but
All right.
just as an example.
Thanks.
Okay. There are, you know, I think countrywide significant concerns about, and in Massachusetts too, about what have been growing numbers and more positive cases, more hospitalizations, more deaths over the last, say, month or so. But eventually this is going to become something that's endemic rather than epidemic. It'll be something that we live with, and there will be normalcy coming at some point. And, you know, from our standpoint, we're going to follow what the science says. And, you know, if in fact we get mandates from the state, we'll have to look at those and you know, do what is required. But hopefully we will turn a corner and things, as I say, will get closer to normal. And hopefully in the near future. So let's all work toward that.
And I guess the only other thing I would add is that there is certain data that we've also asked the state for that they've not provided to date. So to some of our community members that are looking for other breakthrough in hospitalization and all of that data, I encourage them to reach out to DPH and ask for them to start sharing that data through their weekly reports, because that's the same source of information that we have.
Great. Thank you, Keith. All right. So we are on to information from the superintendent.
Thank you. The next three items on the school committee agenda do focus around our diversity, equity, and inclusion, our pillar. And we'll first start with the work that we really have been looking at over the last month in context of where we've been also. So we're hoping an opportunity to pull all of this together in a short presentation to school committee and the community, but really focus in on the end of this presentation with looking at our next steps. And then the other two parts of our meeting talking about an elementary workshop to talk about elementary curriculum and then community engagement. Okay, so Mary and I will be presenting this evening, and then we do have Adam Federico, our principal, Andy St. Pierre, our athletic director, and Julie Postanek from our elementary team that are here to answer questions throughout tonight's presentations. Okay. Again, the diversity, equity, inclusion is one of our three pillars to have engaged students. And as stated earlier from our school committee anti-racist resolution, these are the priorities for the district that we create a welcoming community for all, ongoing professional development. Mary will be talking about that. Recruit and retain a diverse and culturally responsive workforce. Although that isn't part of tonight's presentation, that is something we have been working on and are part of the Massachusetts Partnership for Diversity in Education and getting support there with that organization. Continue ongoing equity audits of policies, procedures, and programs. You'll see that at different times during this year. The policy subcommittee will be meeting again starting in January. Last year we did look at 10 policies and incorporated them into our opening month of school required trainings. The history of racial oppression in works by authors of color and works from diverse perspectives in our curriculum is something that is ongoing and will be part of continuing conversations with our curriculum subcommittee in the school committee and our community, and then communicate about issues of racism and hate, continuing to listen to our community to be more transparent in our work there, and through the instance at our middle school, hope that that was another step in the right direction of our communication with the community. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, again, looking at our engaged students, is to have the culturally responsive learning opportunities, build a sense of belonging, and establish the school environment where all feel valued, heard, and supported. A lot of that work has been ongoing and a real emphasis as we began school with everyone back at school this school year. And then implement professional learning for all of our adults so that we all strive to become anti-racist educators. So I'd like to move to Mary, who will give us the background, and then I'll come back to talk about next steps with Mary.
So we thought we'd talk about a little bit of where we've been kind of along the way, what our journey has been and with diversity, equity, and inclusion, because it has been work we've been doing for many years in Danvers. It started prior to our current strategic plan in 2018, where we were really working on selecting curriculums that were able to be accessed by all students and that were easily differentiated so that all students had access to a rigorous curriculum. We also worked on developing universally designed lessons, so that was called UDL, and that is that we provide multiple access points to our lessons so that all learners can participate in those lessons. And then we also worked in disaggregating data, classroom data, so either MCAS data or benchmark data that we had as a district, so we worked there. So then started in 2018 is when we began the strategic plan. We deepened our commitment to culturally responsive teaching and learning, as well as inclusion work, by becoming members of the ECLC Cohort 1 group, so which ECLC is Essex County Learning Community, and you hear me talking about that a lot at school committee meetings. So they had done lots of professional learning for our school district, and we've been so fortunate to be able to do that work. We also attended a 3-day conference that Zaretta Hammond facilitated, and she is an author of a book called Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain, so it really gets into the brain science of how teaching and learning should be culturally responsive. We came back from that work and really integrated into our what we call sheltered English immersion professional learning. All teachers have to have professional learning in this to recertify. It's to help our English language learners and students that have language disabilities as well benefit from using these sheltered English immersion strategies in the classroom. And then fast forward to June 2020, we really reinforced our commitment to safe and supportive learning environments, and we really started to take an anti-racist lens with that, and we did that through the June PD days. We also focused on supporting behaviors as well in that classroom when we worked with, and I'm forgetting her name now, that we really worked on supporting all types of behaviors and anxieties that kids have in their curriculum. So that comes into the safe and supportive learning environments. In the school year 2021, that was our year of hybrid learning for COVID. So we had 10 professional learning days, and we really worked hard on really establishing safe and supportive learning environments, because now the environments were different. It wasn't all 100% in person. There were some remote learning environments, and we really worked on how do you build relationships with kids virtually as well as in the classroom. And we were working on also the culturally responsive practices and putting in the working with social emotional learning and really focusing on the equity enhancements that have that CASEL has done to the 5 social emotional learning competencies. In December of 2020, my curriculum director team and myself, we attended an equity institute that was put on by the Teachers College, and that was an excellent institute to really get us to be thinking deeply about how you begin and do the work, the anti-racist, anti-bias work with teachers. So that really helped us kind of formulate what comes in January 2021, which is a study group we put together for pre-K to 12 teachers, which was striving to become anti-racist educators. That work was also informed in January of 2021 when we worked with the Anti-Defamation League, the ADL. They came in and did a series of workshops for the administrators, and and that work helped us inform the anti-racist study group, and then also the DHS athletes anti-bias training. So we really took that knowledge from the Equity Institute and the ADL training and infused it in 2 ways, 2 directions, one to the athletes and 2 up to working with teachers. So then when, in the spring, I was also fortunate to be part of Project SEED with Ellen Fear from the middle school, which is seeking educational equity and diversity. It's out of Wellesley College. So they teach us how to have facilitate conversations around diversity, equity, inclusion. And this fall, I am working with 8 teacher leaders in the district in the course. It's actually happening right now, so it was late fall to the winter. And so we're working to kind of spread that facilitation work out with teachers. In June and August of 2021 and coming into the school year, we really focused on building relationships with students. So student-teacher relationships and building that. And we did that through an anti-racist lens, and we really started our work on identity. We really learned from the Equity Institute and our work with ADL is that until you understand yourself and your own identity and your own cultural identity, it's really hard to understand someone else's perspective or the perspective of someone that has a different identity than you do. So we worked with adults on that in professional learning, and we also worked with students in the classroom. So this school year, we have some diversity, equity, and inclusion study groups at each level, at the elementary level, middle, and high school. And so all those diversity, equity, inclusion themes are infused in that professional learning. And in different ways, students are engaged in identity work and in some of the equity enhanced SEL lessons, student social emotional learning lessons. So that is kind of where we've been and how we've landed to where we are. And really, all that to say is we really are working hard on creating that sense of belonging, that all students feel that they belong in our classrooms, in our schools, in our district. And we really feel like this quote really helps sum up like what we're trying to do in that work. So the quote is, inclusivity in the context of teaching and learning does not simply mean that you are allowed to be present here. To be included means that we have changed ourselves and our practices to make here a place where you can thrive. So that was a quote that really stood out. This is Cornelius Minor wrote a book, We Got This, and that was one of our June book studies that we did. So now, where are we going? So with our school and district community, we were awarded in the spring of last year, we applied for and was selected as a district to participate in the Department of Education's MTSS Academy, which is focused on culturally responsive practices leadership academy. The organization called The Black Print is running those, and it's a 3-year process. It helps us with strategic planning, which is timing out beautifully because by the time we're done with working with Black Print we'll be working on our next strategic plan. So it's going to really help to make sure that we have a culturally responsive strategic plan moving forward. Teachers and administrators are continuing their professional learning around anti-bias and anti-racist work. Students are continue to be reading culturally responsive literature, and they are participating in civics units along with social emotional learning work. Danvers High students are going to be participating in anti-bias, anti-hazing training for student athletes. And then families, there are culture, climate, and transparency committees at the middle and high school. And there's every school council, works on the school improvement plan, which all have a diversity, equity, and inclusion goal in it. I'm going to turn it back to Lisa.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you for providing the background since 2018, the ongoing and consistent work that we have been accomplishing. And this is a journey, so I know it may seem that sometimes it's what we have done in the past. So there's the past, the present, and the future. And we're going to talk now about moving forward with additional pieces for the future that are in place for this school year. Working throughout the town of Danvers as a community, the Lappin Foundation, and working with Adam Federico. And I again want to thank Adam for recommending the idea to have the intergenerational Holocaust Symposium. So that way we have students and adults working together. So that will start in January. And we also have in equity, well, this is what we'll be talking about later in tonight's meeting, the Equity Community Study Group, a workshop with our school committee members so we can develop our collective why for our anti-bias, anti-racist work and beginning at the elementary level. Community engagement and communications, again, we'll be talking about that this evening. And then also continuing to work with our human rights and inclusion who have been working closely with the North Shore NAACP. So we look forward to that continued partnership. Looking at the And thank you to Mary, being able to put everything into a chart format that really talks about all of our stakeholders. And we do by Diane Tebow. There are more copies there. And this really looks at, again, that the foundation, as Mary spoke about, having our multi-tiered system of support, the culturally responsive practices, the Leadership Academy, that includes administrators, teachers, and a school committee member. The work with the community, as we spoke about, the Lappin Foundation. Again, as I spoke about earlier, the number of organizations and community members who have stepped forward to support our community. With administrators, Mary was able to share more about that, and we'll continue our work through the Essex County Learning Community in the work with MTSS and the equity, anti-racist work around equity and diversity. Mary was able to talk about teachers and staff. We continue to work with the bullying, hazing, and inappropriate behaviors in protecting students from abuse. This is a course from the National Federation of the State High School Associations. And this year, and again, Andy is here to be able to answer additional questions, the MIAA has started an anti-bias training and pledge, which will happen during the community block with our student athletes coming up shortly. Working with families, we have culture, climate, and transparency committees that Adam started at the high school in November. The middle school followed up in December. I believe at the high school level, we had about 15 parents, the middle school level about 7 to 8 parents. And again, we encourage parents to participate in the culture, climate, and transparency, and there are other opportunities for parents to be involved in our schools also. And then looking at our students. So all of the work that we do centers around our students, and Reese was able to share our anti-discrimination club. We have PRISM. Adam has started with students an Issues to Action club. We have our Women of the World club, the SAD, Students Against Destructive Decision, our Danvers Care student leaders. This year having our student reps from the high school with our Human Rights and Inclusion Committee, which is this Thursday evening at 7 p.m. at Town Hall, and the school department along with our student reps are part of the agenda to share more about what we were sharing here tonight with the community. We also have our community block, which there are student leaders, but all students are participating in community block. This is the first year of it, so we're really trying to set the foundation and putting in the topics and activities that are going to be most meaningful for students during that time. And then we'd like to end with the anti-bias, anti-hazing training, specifically for students and our athletes. We are grateful for Janelle Ridley. She is a Danvers resident who will be working on student leadership game design. We're looking at, similar to the Lappin Foundation, that groups of about 25 students at a time moving forward during this, in this first year. Dennis Goodwin will be able to present on anti-hazing. We are working with the Northeastern University Center for Sports and Society. They have 3 modules, one of them being toxic speech prevention, and that will begin into the spring also. And we will continue with our DHS anti-bias training for our athletes, and that will move into our work with all students during the community block. Okay. So I'd like to finish with programming. There is an expense to adding the student programming for this year. We're estimating it will be about $40,000, and we're looking at funding through the following sources: our program development budget line, grants and donations, and we are able to apply for the hate crime prevention grant through the Department of Secondary and Elementary Education, which is due at the end of this month. I'd like to open it up to questions from school committee.
Okay, so let's start with Arthur. Questions?
I don't think I have any specific questions. It's a lot, and it's good. Some of it has already been going on. Some of it's going to be added to it. So I guess the only question I have is really more general: is how's it going so far? What are we seeing? Are we seeing any positives out of this and just kind of a feel for what's happening.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to ask Adam Federico, who is firsthand working with our students and our teachers, especially at the high school level. We can share at the middle school and the elementary level. At the middle school, the work we did after the 2 instances with the lessons through the Project Hawk were successful, and we will continue to do those types of activities, and using also their advisory, the Project Hawk opportunity with SEL also. And at the elementary level, Julie is also here that could share some information about the identity work at the elementary. But I think, Mr. Scumish, your questions weren't high school at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's where most of what we've already started doing is happening. So,
yes, thank you.
So I would, just start by saying that, this work really began for us last spring, and when my team took over heading into the school year, and I'd say the foundation of it was really about, establishing a positive and safe climate and really empowering student voice. I think that we're doing a lot of good work toward that. I feel like we've really been able to tap into student voice and student advocacy, and I think that's a really important part of a successful high school. So I've seen firsthand lots of kids who are taking on leadership roles, who are working to improve the climate. We're working with our student leadership groups, for example, to create an anonymous reporting form that could be accessible by all kids. And that's coming directly that's collaboration between kids and the administration. And we're almost there. We're going to be able to roll that out to all students very soon. So that's like a good example I think, of the work we're trying to do at the school. Teachers are pushing in terms of their curriculum. They're being very reflective and supportive of ensuring that there is a positive environment at the classroom level. We still have work to do. But I firmly believe that all the stakeholders at our school are on board and willing to be a part of the work. So to answer your question, I do see progress. I see a school that's committed to being a better place. I think our students want that, and they're motivated by it, and we're working with our families to gain their support as well and to make sure that their voices are heard too. So I think I'm proud of the work we've done so far. We have a lot more to do, but we're down for that work, and we're going to continue it.
And there's a lot that's being added, and it's got a lot of work for you and your team and all your teachers, and they still have to teach all the other things they have to teach too. Do you see that as workable? You see that it can be accomplished with, no kind of loss anywhere?
I think our faculty is dedicated to providing the best experience that they can. A lot of this work, I think, goes hand in hand with an effective classroom environment and an effective delivery of content. So if you want to have a classroom where kids are able to participate in discussions, feel safe to offer their ideas, to even disagree with one another, we need to do that foundational work of making sure that everyone feels like they belong. So I don't think one takes away from the other. We definitely have had to recognize like there are certain other initiatives that maybe we're going to just ease off the gas pedal a little because this is a priority. But I think that ensuring that everyone feels safe in the classroom allows for learning to happen. Mm-hmm. So I think ultimately it will pay off and it will let kids be the best students that they can. So I think it will all work together, and we have to be strategic with maybe going in a different order or putting something off till later in the year. But I feel like we can do it, and my faculty is they're on board and they're working really hard at it.
Sounds like everybody's engaged and motivated to make all of this happen.
I very much believe so.
Can I ask Reese? Can I ask you, how do you see things going at the high school right now?
I think things are going really well considering where we used to be. I think a lot of students and like some of my peers have really come forward and taken on like the leadership role. I know I have in order to make that change to DHS, and I think people are becoming like more aware and passionate about advocating for just basic human rights and just creating a better environment. And like Mr. Federico said, I know I have conversations as a class with teachers about all different types of things, and it makes me feel more comfortable in the classroom. And even if it's not directly following the curriculum, we're definitely learning something, and it's making us better students and better peers and just like better people overall in the community and inside the school.
Great, thank you. That sounds positive. The one thing you said, which I think we've been saying for 15 years, is that kids learn when they're safe, when they feel safe and they feel comfortable, and that is crucial. So, keep going with it, keep working at it, and obviously update us as we go along. Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Reese.
Alice.
Yeah, I guess I have a question just more about measuring the success of this, because I do think that there is quite a bit going on. And Adam, I appreciate your honesty where you're like, we know when to pause and we know where to put the gas on. And so I'm curious on how we're going to measure whether or not some of these programs are more or less successful than others, I guess is my first question. So we could start there.
Yeah, so I think it starts with, just looking at our data, right? So it's a simple step is just us really looking at regularly what kind of incidents are we having, what are we doing about it, and then we've committed to regularly updating families about those things. So I think that's something that we can look at, on a monthly basis, at the end of the year, at a midpoint in the year. I think that's sort of harder data that we can look at and say, okay, we're seeing these kind of incidents, we're seeing issues here, but not here. So we're collecting information about that. We're also trying to make our referral system more efficient, so that we can moving from more of a paper system to a electronic system, so that we can more quickly look at what we're dealing with. So I think that's one way to measure it. And then I think there's always really good data when you ask the kids. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about community block, I've said this before and I'll say it again. Community block's the infrastructure. It's the pathway to do a ton of different kinds of work. So as we create these smaller communities, those are venues then where we can ask for feedback from students, ask for feedback from teachers, and get a sense of what kids are seeing is going well, where there's a problem area, what feels better, what does not feel better. So I think we're committed to getting that feedback from students and using community block as sort of like the way to do that. So I think that would be another way to evaluate how we're doing. You'd love to say that nothing's ever going to happen again that's going to be troubling or that's going to be an incident, but I don't know that we can make that promise. But I think what I've learned from this situation is we can be better at our response too, and we can make sure that we're meticulous and clear, and that all our stakeholders feel like they have what they need. And if they don't feel like they have what they need, they have an avenue to have a deeper conversation. So I don't exactly know how you measure that, but I think you look at what have we added, what are we doing, and I think that's another place too. So those are all ways I think we can look at where we are in the process.
And Adam, I would add one other piece. In working with Danvers Cares, we do have the youth risk behavior survey that we will be doing with our middle school and high school again. So that is we can compare that statewide, sometimes nationally, for any trends that are there also. So we'll have that. And then later in the agenda, talking about the community engagement and opportunity for staff and families to also give some feedback of what the values are for our school community.
Great. Actually, I have a question for Andy, if you don't mind. Thanks. I had a just quick question on the feedback that you've been hearing on the anti-bias training for athletes. Curious if you're hearing anything from the families, the students themselves. Have you noticed any difference or received any feedback that you could share with us?
The bulk of the training we did a year ago and I got some feedback. I didn't get a ton. I didn't get any from the parents, but the kids were really engaged. And the one thing about that training that kind of stuck in my mind when it was very new and it came out of nowhere and we put it on everyone to do it, and the numbers were phenomenal for the kids showing up. There's definitely an appetite for it. There's a thirst for it from the student athletes. So there wasn't specific feedback like this was phenomenal, this was great, but in just speaking to kids in passing, kind of picking their brains about it, said this is good stuff to start talking about. And I think the goal for what we were doing was really the awareness piece, you know, putting names to things for people, and starting to have the conversations. So when things are happening, we can recognize it in the school. And I think the awareness piece is what I sort of preach when we were doing this, is just to get it out there so you guys start to know what we're talking about. Microaggressions, people might not know what those are. So we're able to define those and look at examples of those. And I think that's the stuff that really stuck with the student athletes.
Okay, that's great. And then if because they take a pledge, right, after doing the training?
So that's a new initiative right now.
Initiative.
We've not done that. We'll be doing that in the community block coming up here.
Okay.
So it's a diversity, equity, inclusion pledge that goes through a series of different things that you pledge to do. And a lot of it's about communicating and not seeing stuff and speaking about it and saying something to someone about it. That's a big part of this work, right? So I think that's what they're trying to explicitly clarify for students is being on the same page and saying something when you see something, and having coaches do it and having our administrators do it as well. So I think, again, it's all about that communication piece. So we know what it is. We know what's right and wrong. We know where we go and who we can speak to when these issues occur and when they happen. So that's coming up. There's the pledge, and then there's an anti-bias training as well that goes along with it, an online training through the National Federation of High Schools.
Okay. Thank you. That's all of the questions I had. Appreciate it.
Can I
Thank
just
you.
ask, since Andy's up there, can I just follow up with one?
Sure.
As far as how you're kind of training, talking to, dealing with coaches now, how's that changed in the course of all of these things we're talking about with the kids? I'm assuming that it's something that you're stressing more with the coaches, or whatever you can tell me about that.
Yeah, so this even goes back a couple of years, just resetting the priorities, and a lot of that is the communication piece. You know, not doing things in isolation because you're after school, because you're a part-time stipend coach, you know, because you're just one program in one season. We want things that are happening in the programs to be discussed and talked about so we can work through the problems together as a group, and not trying to isolate it and solve things on our own in isolation. So a lot of it is just that communication piece, and really stressing the atmosphere that we're creating within our sports programs, making it a safe place. That's something that was probably taken for granted in the past, where it's definitely become more explicit for the coaches. First and foremost is making it a safe place where people want to be and where they feel comfortable learning in their extracurricular pursuits.
Great, thanks.
Robin.
I don't have any questions for Mr. St. Pierre or Mr. Federico. I guess it's like general just administration questions to clarify some things.
Sure.
So I think we're doing great work with the athletes. My one, I guess, question / concern is if, I know that the athletes are also participants in community block, et cetera, but if we're only having, like, why are we not having any kid who participates in extracurricular participate in this anti-bias training? Because it makes me feel like that's not equitable. And I mean also like at the middle school, because those kids are old enough, they have, they participate in extracurricular school-wide stuff. So I get a little bit nervous. I mean, I think we're doing great things with the athletes, but I don't want it to just seem like, well, only athletes, are going to do this or could do this or whatever.
So we're actually, our plan is to roll out the same training to the entire student body.
Awesome.
And that'll start this January, February.
Okay. All right.
So everyone will have the same foundational training. And we'll do it this year. We'll have to do the whole school.
Right.
Then in future years, we'll just have to do the freshman class.
Okay.
So, and again, community block is the infrastructure for it. It's the schedule. It's the time. It's the communities that allow us to do those kind of things. And then it can just be long. There's a long game to this too. So
okay. Awesome.
Yeah, that's.
Okay.
I think we wanted to try to hit both.
Right.
Sort of both sides of the issue there. But that is the plan for starting in 2022. I guess.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. The other question, I know this always happens whenever there's a rise with school shootings. just a week. I'm sure we're continuing to monitor like SE, people's social emotional needs and stuff like that. I know a few parents got really nervous about that, and I know that's always an uptick. So, I mean, and that's just K through 12, obviously. That isn't just at the high school. So I just wanted to bring that up. And then when we're talking about teachers in the district participating and in different anti-bias training, is like administrative assistants included in that, the cafeteria workers, paras, just because in that, they all interact with students. So I'm wondering kind of where we are in that process with the entire, what it means by staff specifically. Did you want to?
Yes, right now it is mainly teachers that we're working on that with, so that we will be putting in a plan in place for getting staff on board as well.
Okay.
But we're at the beginning of this work, and we have study groups that are doing the identity work and the with students as well. But again, it's only the teachers that are in those study groups, and we'll be now moving on to all teachers to do that work as well. So
okay, so it's going to be in the end. I mean, obviously not tomorrow, but it should be the school like as a community, like all workers, hopefully.
A few years ago, we started with social emotional learning. It was the same idea. We worked with teachers and really did a lot of like pre-work with the teachers. And then starting in, I think it was September of 2018, that we did a whole all staff, like you said, cafeteria workers, administrative assistants, bus drivers, they all were here on opening day to really understand like social emotional learning and what each one of those.
For the parts that they needed, like what, right, okay. Thank you very much. That's all I have. You're up, Mr. K.
No, sure. All right. Okay. So this is a comprehensive list. I've counted 40, 50 different things on here. So it's just a couple of comments, just so we can maybe set the narrative here before it gets set for us. Some of these are new, some of these are not. So what I want to make sure people realize is this is not something that we just created in the past week in a response to recent events, right? These are some things we have tried, maybe some things we've stopped doing, but we are committed to adding constant things and constantly improving. This is the first time and we probably have had it, but this is the first time I have seen everything listed comprehensively. So for folks that have a question about looking at the big picture overall, I think this is a good starting point to provide feedback for community members, for everybody else to look at this and say, okay, what about X, Y, and Z? What about, and I'm making this up, right? What about feedback from these teams? What about in school that was done here? What about this program was done at this school? Have you considered this? So this is a great opportunity to take a look at that, because looking at each of these individually, yeah, this looks great. We've got a lot of stuff on a piece of paper. The only reason this is going to work is if it works collectively. So the student groups are great, right? The programs for families are great. Are we going to know if each of these individually works? I don't know. But collectively, I think through some of the things that some of the folks mentioned in terms of the climate surveys, in terms of, probably the incidents reporting, I agree with Robin, there's probably some other metrics we're going to want to be able to look at, but that collectively is how we're going to look at this. So, the first thing is new versus legacy programs. Would be helpful to maybe have a breakout of some of these, which are new, which are kind of legacy just for us. The other one is required versus optional, because my concern is in a lot of these things, it's not reaching the right folks, right? The people that could really benefit from some of these, they don't have time to attend the seminars. They're not doing some of these. I do think we're addressing a lot of them in school, though, with the students, right? A lot of this is mandatory, right? It's mandatory that you attend the sessions. It's mandatory that you have these dialogues, right? So, I'm not going to comment on which of these aren't, but that lens of, sort of a required versus an optional on when you look at these is also helpful to sort of bring, I would say, forward. So, yep, go ahead.
And you need some of the optional, though, to get the work off the ground. So you need to have teacher leaders in this work so that when you go to do the mandatory work, you have that leadership in the teacher ranks to help that move forward. So that's kind of how it starts. It starts with the optional professional learning. They can choose to participate in the study group. They can choose to come to our June optional days and some of the beginning of school days to do that work. But then it all does translate, and we have been having this work happening in our in-service days and our early release days this school year.
Yeah, I mean, my hypothesis on this, I'll be honest, I think you have to have these programs available. I think it's going to start with the student experience. It's going to start with the student culture. It's going to start with having those dialogues. Because if it's just, us, standing here talking and saying this and this and this, it's not where real change happens. Real change happens where the students are. It's having those conversations, and at home too, by the way, right? It's not just the school. It's what are you saying at home? Are folks standing up? So if you have the resources to do that and give students a voice when they're at home, when they're with the friends, that's where I like to see. I know we've got a couple of them on here, which is great. So those are the only comments that I have overall, but it's a good start. I think we've got a lot more to do, but looking forward to seeing how it progresses. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff. One of the things when I look at, there's sort of a tremendous list of things, but I think it would be helpful to highlight a couple of activities that sort of jump out for us, for the public. So can you talk a little bit more about the Holocaust Symposium, Lisa, as to what that involves and how that's going to work?
Sure. I'd like, if Adam would like to do that. Adam has really led this with the executive director from the Lappin Foundation.
So this event was, we were pointed to this resource by a parent and a community member. And we met with the Lappin Foundation, who's worked with a lot of different high schools to provide educational experiences around the Holocaust and anti-Semitism and genocide. And in talking with Debbie Colton from the foundation, I wanted to create an experience where our students at Danvers High School worked with community members from our town, because I felt like we needed those two groups to interact and to tell part of our story. I feel it's really important for the community to get to know our students in a variety of ways and in a variety of venues. And so in talking with Ms. Colton, they've never done anything like this. But as soon as we started talking about it, she thought this was a great opportunity to do something that could then be a model for other districts. So we settled on, we identified that we'd like to have 25 students and 25 community members. The students over-registered within a week, which was great. I was really proud of them. And we hit our community number as well. So we're really excited. I also think that this format, to me, is a model for our own community. I think, as you just stated, these conversations can't just happen in school. It can't just be work in school. The work we do is super important, but I think, as I've said before, we need the help from the community. We need the connection to the community. So if this goes well, I feel like this is then a model that we could look at other issues, other types of discrimination, other issues that we're looking at as a community. And so I'm really excited about it. I think it's something that's going to be really meaningful. And I think it serves as a model for us to attack a lot of different kinds of issues or topics that we need to. So that's just where that came from. It started with a suggestion from one parent, and it turned into something that I think is going to really be something we can be proud of.
It's certainly a time commitment for community members, but I believe it's going to be a pretty great experience, both in terms of something educational, but also intergenerational between, adults and our students, as you say, getting to know the students more.
Yeah, it's six 1 hour to 90-minute sessions, 6 Thursdays, and I think it'll be something that people will look back on and really feel like they learned a lot. And again, I feel it's important for the community to work with our kids in a variety of ways.
Mm-hmm. Now, can you also talk about the another thing that kind of jumped out at me, the Culture, Climate, and Transparency Committees, purpose and what they do and what the first few meetings were like?
So I think one thing that was clear to me, really following kind of the recent events was we needed to step back and look at how are we engaging with our families. It was clear that to me that our families felt like they wanted more effective communication. They wanted to have a better understanding of what was going on, and they wanted to be part of that dialogue. So I felt like it was an opportunity. We had sort of a lot of motivation, a lot of emotion in the community, and it was an opportunity to bring people together. So our first meeting, we used a protocol really where we just listened, and we asked parents to respond to a variety of prompts. We recorded that information. We talked a lot about sort of communication and engagement. We came up with rules for the group, and we sort of came up with a working framework. So that meeting was really about, I think, just getting to know one another. Our next meeting is going to, again, we're going to use protocols. I feel like, and the parents had really good feedback about this. They really they want this to be productive. This isn't, they don't see this as just a venting session or a chance to just come and yell at us or to express their frustrations or whatever the case. It's really meant to be productive. So we're going to do a protocol to sort of reflect on how we've arrived at where we are December, it'll be, I think, the 21st. So how did we get to this point in time? And I think we agreed as a group that we wanted to give people a chance to sort of process that in a structured way. And that out of that, we can then really move forward and decide what's next. What's the real focus of this group? And I think that the general topic is improving family engagement. So we want our families at Danvers High School to feel more like partners and to feel like they have the information that they need, and vice versa. We want to feel like families are going to provide us with the information that we need and that they're partners in supporting us. So we've had about 20 parents indicate interest. We had 15, I think, or 16 at the first meeting. And my hope is that it'll become sort of a working committee that will go through the school year and become just a part of how we do business. It doesn't have to be just something we do this year. I'd like to see it just continue as a way to how we do business and how we engage with our families.
That does sound like a terrific idea, and it's been historically, parents are most involved in the elementary levels, and then as the kids translate into middle school and high school, parents, for a lot of different reasons, end up not quite as connected. So I think anything you can do to improve that connection and give parents a place where they can be heard, I think is great.
I think at the high school level, parent involvement becomes very specialized.
Yeah.
So you support, whether it's theater or music or athletics or, a particular interest area. So this is meant to be broader than that. And I think that's the opportunity that was sort of reinforced to me in the last few weeks, was that we need to sort of bring parents back in, and parents need to be motivated too. It's as a parent of a high schooler, I get it, but this was sort of I think a chance for us. We were all motivated, and we were all, I think, wanting to do something. So it was a good opportunity for us.
Excellent. Thanks, Adam. Andy, just a question or two for you. In terms of the specifics, like how is, say, Northeastern University Center for Sport and Society, how will they be working with us? It looks like they're going to provide workshops, modules, basically, and who will participate in those modules?
Yeah, so the Northeastern one's an interesting one. The Center for Sport and Society has been around for quite a while. They have a lot of speakers that they bring in, former professional athletes, former college athletes, that connect with kids and talk to young people, not just kids, but young people and people in the schools about these issues in a tangible way, having dialogue. It's a 2-day training, forget 5 hours, I think, at a time, something like that. That's correct. So they recommended like a Friday, Saturday type thing. But they want a mix of people. They want the school community represented. They want adults, they want young people, they want athletes, they want club members, they want everything. To get that varied background, to get the differences, and to have speaking points and have people get together. The beauty about this training, and they've done this training for the National Football League, Major League Baseball, colleges, high schools. They're very big, and they've done this for a long time. But they're very approachable in our conversation with them, very willing and eager to help us, and not aggressive. They were happy to give us some points and really excited to work with us. The good thing about this program, I think, not only do the 3 modules they fit right into what we're talking about, but their program, once they went to go through the training sessions, our people are now able to start training our own people here in the community, in the schools. So that dialogue doesn't just end. That was the importance of finding things that had lasting impact and not just one and done issues. Some are one and done, but really having those impactful ones that will last, that will carry on. So we don't necessarily have to have them in every year to train our people. We can do it and then sort of develop sort of our own little curriculum that will work and carry this thing through.
Good. One more question. I've heard this from different people, and I've thought about it too. The role of captains when it comes to our various teams. And as an athlete, I'm sure you're aware of the importance of that leadership level. But, you know, do captains get any training in terms of what their role is and what the expectations are, you know, in a formal kind of way, formal training? And are we looking at that as a way to go?
I don't know if our captains have specific training in these areas, so to speak. I guess I've always had more of a broad view on that. You don't necessarily have to be a captain to be interested in this and be able to make a difference and be involved. So I would never just put it right on captains.
No, of course.
You know, I think it's more impactful to get everybody involved in it. So yeah, you could certainly do some sort of captains training for the captains. But, you know, I just think we don't have a huge school. You know, we have a lot of kids here in the program that I just think if you segmented to just captains, I think you're missing the boat a little bit.
I'm not saying do just captains. Obviously, I think the great stuff is to reach everybody.
Right.
It does seem to me that, you know, some sort of, you know, reach out to the different captains, because, you know, there are going to be other students who look up to them as leaders. And it's tough to throw someone into a leadership role without giving them some guidance, especially young people. So
Sure.
It's just a thought. I don't think it's an either or. I think you can
A little extra.
do the programs to reach people, but also reach out in particular to the captains, because they can be influential.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely.
All right. Thanks. I think that's all I have.
Thank you.
All right. So let's see. What is next? It's still with you, Dr. Diener, I believe.
It is, yes. Thank you. It is under new business for school committee. Thank you, Adam and Andy. This year, as chair, Eric Crane asked for having an equity and a curriculum subcommittee, and usually they're at the end of the agenda as we do our other updates. So we thought it would be an opportunity to do a quick overview, and I have that. And for our equity subcommittee, we have Jeff Kay and Alice Campbell. In our curriculum subcommittee, Robin Doherty and Alice Campbell on those two subcommittees, and an opportunity with a brief overview as to looking at a piece that we really have thought about over the last month of having the workshop model with school committee members, and inviting our elementary parents to join us in that discussion of really looking at our collective why. I thinking about tonight's meeting also of looking at this, of what we learned through a global health pandemic, is that in schools that we are so trained to put together schedules that we take in September, and we know exactly what we're doing through June. And for the last now over 18 months, but since March of 2020, that has not been true for public education and in education in general. So we've had to adjust along the way. We'd start one piece and then learn something more and have to adjust what we were doing. So we've talked about flexibility and perseverance as we move through this. And the work with the anti-bias, anti-racist, I think is similar. Our Human Rights and Inclusion Committee is looking at this as a pandemic also, in the health of our community. So with that, I think what we're looking at is things that we may have said in August or September, they continue to evolve. So it's not that we want something that's perfect, it's we want to continue to monitor where we are, continue to have the community involved with us as we continue to move forward with our anti-bias and our anti-racist, which falls for us under our diversity, equity, and inclusion work. Mary, we have the agenda up there at the moment. If we could move to, I think if you click under the subcommittee, the word subcommittee. Yes, thank you. There we go. Thanks. And this is all on our website. Our equity subcommittee is looking at our work together to explore and advise the school committee on our district efforts to ensure a safe and supportive learning environment for all students, which we have been talking about. I really want to just kind of highlight a couple of pieces and talk about our next steps. Our both equity and the curriculum subcommittee have met already at least once. We did an introductory meeting and then we began with our elementary work. We will then continue with our high school diversity work and then middle school in a similar process with the curriculum subcommittee. Again, we're really looking at what we've been talking about here tonight. I may have been using the word portrait of a graduate. We were using that in 2018. At the moment, it's really taken an opportunity in the last couple of months to begin with defining our why as a community. We can look at our students as change makers beginning with preschool and through our grade 5 as we continue that work of looking at when our students graduate from Danvers High School. Our educators have been reading the book Start Here, Start Now, and our elementary, more in-depth, middle school and high school have really been looking at that too, as Mr. Federico has spoken about those conversations within our classroom, and one of the chapters has to do with about difficult conversations within classrooms. So that leads us to...
I tried to advance the slide. And
Wow.
So part of that slide is that music is
solves
the
our
TED Talk
sound
piece.
problem.
Right, is the TED Talk piece. We believe that you would get to see that TED Talk presentation as part of this workshop piece there. So what Julie also did is, and then I spoke with some school committee members and Eric as the chair and looking at it, we originally thought using the book Start Here, Start Now, but Julie reached out to the author and it really is about for educators. So we really want to take and really look at articles, videos like a TED Talk, parts of this book to really work with our school committee and elementary parents. So what we're calling this is our community learning together, school committees, administrators, parents, community members also involved with it. Our goal is to understand the big ideas of anti-racism, anti-bias work and why it's needed to start with our youngest learners. Continue to talk about culturally relevant and sustaining practices. We've heard that with Mr. Federico about wanting the programming, the practices, the procedures that are sustainable within our school community. The affirmation and awareness of everyone's story and our connection of the past to our present. So looking at, we were saying 4 sessions, but we'll call it 4 hours. Again, all of this is evolving. I think, Julie, it was about 2 o'clock today. Mary, Julie, and I were having a conversation, and that was after being able to speak with I'll call it a community engagement consultant, and that was with Steve Arthur also. That again, our continued learning here, we did some additional brainstorming. So we'd like to talk about this in January. And the 4 ideas are exploring the big ideas, young children and race, our systems at work, and again, having sustainable practices starting in our elementary schools. And as I stated earlier, it would be based on the book Start Here, Start Now, with articles and videos for our learning together. So Mr. Crane would like to open it up to school committee members for questions, comments, and really ask about, is this something that school committee would like to move forward with a workshop type of model? It's been a number of years since our school committee, we've had an opportunity. Sometimes, I would say in the past, it's always been an outside consultant. At this time, we'd like to have our elementary team share more in depth where there are, I would say, so many layers to the work that we're doing, from curriculum to what's happening in the classroom to SEL, how it all fits together, that this would be an opportunity to spend 4 hours together with some elementary parents to really look more in depth at our work at the elementary level.
All right, Jeff.
Yeah, no, I support that. I think it's a great opportunity. You know, we've had, the one meeting so far on equity, and I think the dates are, and the curriculum is sound, but any additional support, feedback that we can hear directly, absolutely support. So.
Robin?
Yeah, I agree. I think that, we're asking the kids and the teachers and the administrators to do a lot of like hard work and reflective work. And I think as a school committee, we should also be doing that. So support.
Thanks. Alice?
Yep, I will take part in it and look forward to it.
Mr. Scarlett?
You know me, I love workshops. I'll be there.
Your last one, Mr.
It
Scott.
probably is, yeah.
And
Unless we can fit a couple more in before.
well, there you go. I'll certainly participate, and I hope that we get a good response from the public too. But I think we ought to talk about the context of this a little bit, and this goes back to stamped and some controversy around that, and you talked about getting to the why. So I guess in context, what do you see as the purpose and the optimal result of this workshop?
To really go more in depth with, as we said, the collective why, and it really has to be working together to do that. So starting with, as we keep talking about, sort of that groups of 20, 25, to begin that conversation that can then lead to more community conversation. The work that we're doing, I think we've also learned of, right, we can send out an email, we can put it in our weekly updates, but this is really an opportunity, as we saw a parent here earlier, an opportunity to really go more in depth, and that is needed as we continue to take a look at all levels of our preschool through grade 12 curriculum, and we really want to start that at the elementary level.
Yeah, I mean, really by way of comment, I think if you put aside the sort of public stuff that happened last month, the two issues that we are probably the most, I guess I would say, controversial to some extent, have to do with, one, the response to COVID and masking versus no masking, or what happens if there's ever a vaccine mandate, et cetera. And the second really controversial issue is, how far, when, and how quickly do you move with an anti-racist curriculum? I mean, the truth is it is controversial, and people fall at different places on a continuum from, hey, we shouldn't do this at all, to we should be doing this as quickly as possible, and most of us fall someplace in that curriculum continuum. I'm sorry, and as I said, there are people who would be completely say, hey, we shouldn't bother with this, or just teach the basics, and this is for parents to teach at home, et cetera. So I think it's important to have, to the extent possible, a community dialogue, especially when you're talking about younger students, about why, and their parents, why we are committing to doing this work. And so I feel like that's, when you say getting to the why, that's it. Demonstrating the need and why we're doing this. Now, the other question then becomes ultimately, what tools will we use? What books will be read? What's appropriate for students at different grade levels? And again, this is not a situation like most things we deal with, where there's an obvious consensus. And so hopefully if we can build a consensus and at least build an understanding of where we intend to take this and why, that'll be helpful. We're still going to have people who are going to disagree on the need, disagree on the curriculum, and but hopefully with any luck, and Mr. Butterworth's not here, but I think that's what he's referring to. There's an example of someone who wants us to, dive into this and do what's necessary. And then you have, as I say, people who feel very differently. And what you're looking for is, I think, to bring people along at a pace that works for them. Having said that, you can't put it off forever, in the sense that it's too important a topic to pretend that it's not important at all and just go slow. And that long road that bends toward justice, we can't make it that long. We have a changing demographic in the town of Danvers. We look differently than we did 10 years ago, 20 years ago, certainly when you and I were in school, I think. Very different town. And we need to make sure that we remain a welcoming town, and that every student who comes to us, every student who comes to any of our public schools knows they're going to get a great educational experience, knows that they're going to get an equitable social experience, and that they're going to be treated with dignity. And when we talk about, and references earlier today to the VOTEC and that sort of thing, we want people of Danvers to feel and know and have confidence that in our high school, their students are going to get a great education and have a great experience. So all this work we're doing, it seems to me, early on, is hopefully going to pay dividends that way. And I think, yeah, the workshops in terms of helping to spread that message and getting feedback are very important. So, anyone else before?
I just thought of something. My one concern with like continuing to pause stamped is I think that people could argue that many books that we read could be very controversial. And I'm thinking specifically like middle school, high school, but really any level. So I guess, the longer that we pause, we're getting also into a tricky area at some point. Are we going to have to approve every single book that is like a whole class read, when we're assuming that curriculum directors, educators, that they're making professional decisions and know what they're doing. So I get a little bit nervous when,
well, yeah,
as time,
So, and I think what we really want to do is make sure that we're showing the entire process of our culturally responsive read alouds, what we have from Teachers College for our read alouds and the curriculum, so we can share that there. And then we have new civics units this year that we haven't had an opportunity to go in depth with our school committee but as you said, our own learning together, that everyone else in our school with our administrators, our educators, the teachers, and our students are all learning. So if we take this opportunity in a workshop model to do some additional learning together that is led by our elementary team with Julie, that will help us to have a better understanding of that sequence of our elementary curriculum.
Absolutely.
There seems to be too much obsession on a book. I mean, there's all kinds of resources out there.
Agreed.
And I don't know why we're getting carried into this a book. And, I think it's not a bad thing to make sure that whatever resources that we use are going to do the job that we want to do. Okay. And I don't know if that book does or doesn't. That book certainly presents very, very in-depth histories in very simple terms, and a lot of the real important aspects of that are missed. And and so I'm not saying it's a bad book or anything, but I'm just saying you want to make sure you have the right book. And you want to make sure that when you're doing history, you want to make sure that it's historically accurate. Okay, and there's a for example, there's a portion, there's a section in that book at the beginning where they say that the Great Britain had done away with the slave trade, and now the United States was worried that was going to happen, so they had to go into the Revolutionary War.
That jumped out at me as well.
Well, Great Britain didn't do away with the slave trade till 1818, so it was long after the Revolutionary War. Yep. So there's enough stuff in our history that can serve the purpose of teaching what needs to be taught. Right? There's enough stuff out there that without saying things that didn't happen. Right. And so that's my concern. So my concern is that we have the right, because if you want to, as Eric says, if you want to have a consensus, you have to have, the best you can, things that are going to bring everybody in.
Yeah.
And, I think that's just a concern that I have. And so ultimately, ultimately, I'm not going to be here much longer, so you guys can decide what you want to do. But that's a concern that I have. If we want to get where we want to go, we need to bring as many people along and make sure that we have as much buy-in as we can from everybody, so that we can be successful. And I also don't look at it as so much as anti-racism is important, but I don't look at it as an anti-racist curriculum, more as I look at it as a atmosphere where everybody is treated fairly and equally, and the type of activity where people are not so because of who they are is just not allowed anymore. And and I think we're already moving in that direction, which is what made me happy about what I heard here tonight. So, but let's have the workshop and go for it.
Thank you. Anyone else before we move on? All right, thank you all.
So I think we'll probably be looking at two-hour sessions. And I'll send that out to school committee members too, and just make sure in the timing of it, and possibly starting at 6 o'clock. And we'll set some dates that work for all of you, and then we'll present that to our elementary families. Good.
Okay.
Great. Okay, thank you. Okay, one more item under our pillar of diversity, equity, inclusion, and that is community engagement. And let me just take one moment to switch my screen. This one is only one slide. Okay. So as we talked about, there are different levels of the work that we've been doing, and that foundation with around curriculum and professional learning, work with now student programming, what's happening within our classrooms, and then our community engagement. And from the last month of really taking a look at our community engagement, I would say there's also a piece of looking at the pandemic, that through the global health pandemic, communication and that need for additional information, we saw as something we were going to need to work on. So I think both of these pieces come together in looking at community engagement. This one does have a higher cost, so we did want to separate this out for our school committee. And on a smaller scale, we are starting with working with Karen Gross. She's a national, I'll say, expert consultant in the area of trauma and in sports, and really looking at communities and in her work. And she now lives locally in Gloucester. So we will be working with her, really looking at some diversity, equity, inclusion type of theme things that we can do as a community moving forward. And then there are some larger ones. As I said, I spoke with a Danvers resident who is also a consultant in this area of community engagement, and with Steve Arthur today, and the town's work with hiring a director of diversity and inclusion. So again, sometimes it does take longer. This is a journey, so making sure that we take to the time in the hiring process. And then there's opportunities to work with community engagement consultants that would really look at our current engagement strategies. That's the communication, also, but really looking at our values. An opportunity to do 2 surveys for a family and our staff, and to do some follow-up interviews, which would assess our successes, challenge, and the vision that we want for the Danvers Public Schools, and then be able to produce strategic messaging assets based on our community's priorities. So that looks at it probably could be a cost of up to $50,000, which would mean that we would be switching something else in the budget. So wanted to bring that to our school committee members and ask for your support on that.
Yeah, I don't think we want to not do these things because of that type of money. I mean, I just think we have to do it. So, and I'm sure we can. I'm sure that Keith can magically make sure that we have the 50K to do that.
It's getting more difficult.
So we always do have our reserve funds that we carry for unanticipated budget expenditures. So it just may mean dipping into one of those lines that we have, and then, it's all kind of the same big plot, right, that we have, and moving some lines. So at the end of the year, when you see your final budget report, there could be an over expenditure in strategic planning for something like this, and then under expenditure in another line using one of those reserve funds in lieu of it.
All right, let's go Robin and Alice.
I think this is exactly what the community is looking for, and that they've been asking for probably for the last 18 months. So I would support any ways to find the funds to do this.
Yeah, I'm definitely in support.
Thanks. And Jeff, Mr. K,
Yep.
hiding down the end.
Support it. Yes.
Is your response. All right.
It's a good response.
I think so too. Yeah, I think that especially when what we're talking about here is exploring what's out there. And if we find something that really seems worth it and really seems to be able to make a difference, yeah, then we move forward. So I'm all for trying to figure out what resources are out there that can help, and then, you know, we can come back and talk about it.
Very good.
Money well spent.
All right. All right, let's see. I think we're
Thank you.
ready to move on, I think, to our order of business. Let's do this, though. Let's take like a 5-minute break before we get on to the order of business. Unless there's...
How much time do we have left?
Yeah, but can we
almost
go?
done, aren't we?
all right, let's go.
This should be like,
Maybe we can go through it quickly. All right.
Today,
should be like 10 minutes.
Good point. Let's go.
We're so close.
6 minutes. Go.
Okay.
So before we roll through, I do just want to highlight one point in the consent agenda, not to slow us down more than normal. But you'll notice in the budget report, I did highlight our special education spending for this year. So we do anticipate, based on some move-ins, that we will overexpend the tuition outline. But again, that's why we have our circuit breaker reserve account, where we carry kind of a full year worth of that reimbursement money. So we will have more than adequate funds to close out the year and balance the year on budget. But there will be some overages that you'll see.
Okay. Thank you, Keith. All right, so do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. Carries. Mr. Secretary, the minutes.
All right, I move to approve and release the minutes from the November 8, 2021 regular meeting, as well as to approve and not release the minutes from the November 8, 2021 and the November 15th, 2021 executive sessions.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there a discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Communications, Dr. Dana?
We have our North Shore Ed Consortium and the annual report. This is by law for our consortiums in the state of Massachusetts to do an annual report. And the board of directors at our last meeting approved the report. And in looking at the demographics at the consortium, Danvers is up there in, I think, about the 4th district in the students that we have attending the North Shore Education Consortium.
Okay.
But there's a wealth of information in there, and it is on the website for our North Shore Ed Consortium, and then again, it will be part of our gender minutes.
Okay. Thank you. Let's see, legislation. I guess this falls under legislation, but there are ongoing discussions in terms of the impact of the vocational school, Essex Tech, in terms of the impact on the town from a budget standpoint. I know Steve is working diligently on that. I expect that will be an ongoing discussion, especially as we get into budget time. So we'll keep you advised as to any developments there. One of the things I think is that I know Adam, I believe, presented at the middle school, right? Has he gone to the middle school in terms of, trying
Panel of students and
Yeah.
administrators with Adam, yes.
Okay. And just how did, I'm sorry, Adam, I just want to talk about this real quick. Well, it's a hot topic. So, yes, can you tell us about that, the theory behind this? We're trying to show people that they can get families and understand they can get a great education here at the high school.
Yeah, so we've put together a more comprehensive communication package about high school options. So we began the process by sending a letter to 8th grade families, just kind of giving an overview of our school. We did an assembly experience with each 8th grade team. We brought one of our a cappella groups, which Reese is a part of. They did a performance at the start and at the end of the assembly. And we did our a cappella groups because it shows not only the performance opportunities at our high school, but also the behind the scenes opportunities. So we were able to introduce our technology student who does all the sound and all the technology supports for the performance, and another student that does all the photography and media for that group. And we feel like showcasing that sort of shows how all of our extracurriculars work, that there's an access point for every student. There's a way to find their success no matter what their interest is. Then we did a PowerPoint presentation emphasizing the many course offerings that we have, both in terms of AP, Project Lead the Way, honors, but also the vast amount of electives that kids can access during their time at Danvers High School. And then we had a panel of students. We had about a dozen students representing all different backgrounds, interest areas, extracurriculars, and they spoke about their favorite course at Danvers High School and an extracurricular activity that they were involved in, and kids were able to ask questions. So I shared those slides with the 8th grade families, and then we released over the weekend an opportunity for 8th grade parents to sign up for individual Zoom sessions with the DHS administrators. So we were offering 15-minute sessions via Zoom at all different times, morning, afternoon, and evening, where parents can really ask individual questions. So we really want this to be a chance for somebody to say, well, my child's interested in this, or I'm thinking about this option, but what is Danvers High School like? So I really encourage 8th grade families to take advantage of that. We put out an initial offering of those meeting opportunities, and we're happy to offer more if they fill up. So we're hoping that, especially families that are looking at lots of different options, I really encourage them to use one of those sessions to ask whatever is on their mind.
Great.
And then we'll have the full 8th grade parent meeting at the end of January as well.
Excellent.
So that's where we stand right now. We're looking to do some other things in the spring. I want to get families up to the high school as well. I think there's an opportunity to remind people about this facility. It's one of the best in the state, and I want to make sure that families are fully aware of what we offer here as well.
Great. Adam, that sounds really comprehensive and really great, and thanks for doing it and getting the students involved and helping people understand what a great opportunity we have here.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thanks to the committee for indulging me a little bit. The only other legislative update is that Sally Kearns and Joan Lovely plan on being here in January from a scheduling standpoint. So unless that changes, we can expect to have them here to present. And that's it for legislation. Subcommittees. I assume that curriculum and assessment and equity we've already covered. Anything on policy at this point?
Policy will start in January.
Okay, so policies in January. Deep.
Well, I don't have a report from Mary Beth, so I can't give you any specifics, but Deep's going really well.
And they're meeting on Wednesday. So
We're meeting on this Wednesday, okay.
Yes,
Okay, glad to hear that. Danvers Cares.
Yeah, so we talked, there was a lot of discussion, great discussion. One of the things that we talked about is the campaign, which is Everyday Matters. So the high school folks are meeting and they're starting to talk about why might kids not come to school, is it because of the pandemic? Like what is it, so they're kind of trying to find out that information right now and working to see once they kind of can pinpoint that, what are the next steps. Mr. St. Pierre, did the Toys for Tots, did the clothing drive end yet? Do you know? It's still going on, right? And the food drive, I believe, is still going on. Okay, put you on the spot. I'm sorry, I forgot the dates. So that's still going on. So you could bring it to the middle school, elementary, high school, and we did get a grant. It's a community grant. We're going to talk about how we could best use it as far as working with anti-discrimination and it's a small grant, but it's a grant to start really looking at what does the community need. So if anyone has ideas to email Mr. St. Pierre, but it's a community grant, so it's not specific
Not just
to the
schools.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Robin.
Welcome.
CPAC, anything on CPAC?
I do not have an update on that. We will get that for the next meeting.
Sure. And human rights and inclusion, we have this month's meeting actually is this Thursday. As many of you know, last month's meeting was really a community meeting and a chance for people to talk about how they were feeling about everything that happened. And a lot of people really opened up. And I think we learned, how much work we have to do, but I think there's also a lot of committed people to help us along the way. You know, when I say we, it's the schools, but also the town. And so it was a good meeting. I hope there'll be further discussion. In fact, I'm sure there will on Thursday, and sort of a review of all that. And I'll report again at the next meeting. Excuse me. So I think, unless anyone has anything else, that's it. Our next meeting is on January 10th, 2022, believe it or not. I don't know where the year has gone. So.
Like nothing happened.
There you go. We'll take.
Motion to adjourn.
Here we go. Second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you and good night, Danvers.